Welcome to the HC Leadership Podcast, forged in fire, led with purpose, formerly known as the Heat of Command. We're here to explore what it takes to lead courageously authentic. From the fireground, battlefield, ballfield, classroom, or boardroom, we bring you real conversations to inspire, challenge, and drive change. Here are your hosts, Kyle Matusik and me, Kerry Henderson. Hey, y'all, another episode of the HC Leadership Podcast, and we have missed you guys. We took a little bit of time off. Just some stuff going on over here at our house that we had to take care of, but we're back now today, and it's getting a little chilly out there. Kyle and I have been on the back end talking a lot about TEEX. TEEX is coming up for us in January. We will be in San Marcos. We hope to see some of you guys there. We'd love to chit chat, meet you guys, see you face to face, see what you think of the podcast, and please come up and introduce yourself if you'll be in TEEX. I know some of you are, and I'm excited about that. And we are going to be podcasting from TEEX the entire conference. So you guys are going to get to hear from a ton of guests. We are hoping to be able to interview and speak with a lot of the keynotes and the instructors and participants and the leadership of TEEX and how they put all of that together and all the planning that goes on. So we are so excited to share that with you guys. And you guys get to listen to it. And so if you can't come to TEEX and you want to hear some of the parts and pieces of what's going on there, you will be able to do that through the HC Leadership Podcast. So we're very excited about that. So for today, I've been thinking a lot about reliability and dependability. And you have heard me talk before about my values. And one of my values that I figured out through this process was dependability. And that it really broke my heart when people weren't dependable or when things fell through that I expected to happen. And at work, I just almost to an OCD-ness about being dependable and reliable. So I wanted to talk today and unpack and just dig into why that is. Why is it so important for people to be reliable? And what does that do for you as a leader? And what does it do for you in other aspects of your life? So not just leadership, but if you're a dependable spouse, there's all this talk right now out there about being in your masculine self. Kyle, have you heard people talking about that lately? Being if a woman has to be in her masculine position, then she doesn't get to be in her feminine element. And so it messes her all up and she can't be soft. And I've just been hearing a ton about this lately about, men really leaning into their masculinity and making sure they're taking care of that part. But anyways, if you're a reliable, dependable spouse, what does that do for your significant other and, how healthy that is? And if you're a dependable parent and what that does for your kiddos growing up. And if you're not a dependable parent, what kind of, is that causing any kind of trauma or lifelong stuff? Let's just go through all of that and just really show how important I think being reliable and dependable is, especially in the workplace.
Yeah, I think, when I look at reliability, I think, maybe we should almost define reliability but before we kind of move on, just because I think that term in and of itself can get skewed, and a lot of people have this idea of what it means to be reliable. And I think, when we think of reliability, it's just not showing up when you're supposed to show up. I think a lot of times, especially in our industry, people have this idea that we need to show up at these certain moments, but it's beyond that, right? I think it's when we look at leadership specifically, it's we don't always need perfection in our leaders. What we need in them is to be predictable. And with predictability in a leader, that's based on reliability and understanding how they are as a leader and then how they show up on a daily basis. And not just in the moments where you're supposed to show up, but in all the moments. And how they continually show up and how you could depend on your leaders time and time again in every type of scenario that might cross through your mind, whether it's professionally or personally. So I think it's so far beyond what we just typically think of reliability, It's almost taking it that step further and having a genuine, I think, interest in your life outside of your workplace, having a genuine interest in your professional development and showing up there. So it's like showing up on so many different levels. And, again, it always goes back to how challenging it is to be an effective leader, because to show up for people in multiple environments and multiple areas of their personal life and professional life, it is definitely challenging. But that's what effective leaders look like. So I don't know, if we're on the same page as far as reliability, but it's like that step further. If you haven't caught on, Kerry and I like to, we like to peel that onion back a few layers and really dig deep. So it's when we bring up terms and we want to have these discussions about things like reliability, it's not just this surface level stuff of, oh, well, we're supposed to show up there, so we do. I'm a leader. I have to show up here. I have to say these words. I have to say this speech, because a lot of times that comes off as not being authentic and just something that you have to do and check a box, right? This is that step further where you don't need the accolades. You don't need to be commended for showing up. It's just something that you do on a regular basis, and it encompasses so many different things, not just what you pick and choose, what you decide to show up for.
Yeah, and I love that you went down that route because I do think that is so important to kind of dig into this. And I think when we talk about being reliable, to me, it's like tasks, it's behaviors, you're a person is reliable because of the things that they're doing. So it's it's completing something you told somebody you'd complete. It's following up when you told somebody you'd follow up. It's taking care of something that you told somebody you would take care of, but it is also admitting when you can't.
Yeah.
It's remembering to follow up and say, "Hey, I know I told you I would take care of this by the end of the day. Hey, look, I really can't get to it, but I'm gonna take care of it at this time and date," and making sure that that happens. And I think dependability is the bigger scope. Dependability is really the character. Like, it's the tasks are being reliable regularly, and that makes you a dependable person. So, like, when I think of dependable people, I think of those people like it's a deep-rooted thing to me. I know that somebody I can count on. And it could be, like, in a personal way, like friends that I know, like, I could always count on them if I needed something, but it's also in professional ways, like, if I know I need something done and done very well, I know who those dependable people are that aren't gonna half-ass it. They're gonna really take it serious and show up for the task. So I like the difference of reliability and dependability. Like, they're different but the same. They kinda go hand in hand with each other. And I think too, and you talked about this a little bit, and it's definitely okay, and I think you become a dependable person when you admit that you can't take care of something, when you're willing to say, "My plate is super full. I would love to be able to take that on." Like, I would love more of a leadership role at church, and I'm trying to lean into that, and I'm helping as a co-lead in the ministry I'm a part of. But I am very honest with, "Hey, I have a ton of stuff professionally at work and in my personal life, so I have to be very honest," and I think that helps make you more reliable and dependable because people know what to expect. You're not just saying, "Yep, yep, yep. I'll do it," and you never finish it. And I and another point with that, I think people that constantly say yes or say, "Yep, I'll take care of it," or people come to them and they ask for something and they're like, "Yep, I'll get it to you," and they don't, and they regularly don't follow through. I think that creates a lot of strife, not just for your coworkers, but I think internally. I think when you're not a reliable person and you know it, or maybe you don't outwardly recognize it or inwardly recognize it, I think it creates a lot of strife for you. Because if you have to go home at the end of the day and go, "Man, shoot, I forgot. I told Kyle I would get this to him," or "I told Kyle I would email him this information," and you're not taking care of that, it's it's an organizational problem, and I think it creates a lot of strife and anxiety internally for the person, not just the people, because obviously that's affecting other people that were waiting on you. But I think for you personally, and if you live in that world, set up some mechanisms for yourself. Like for me, I have to put everything on my calendar, everything. Or like if you came to me and said, "Hey, Carrie, can you take care of this career ladder thing for me at work? Because that's something I help with sometimes." Or, "Hey, I want to take this training class. Is there funding for it? Can you look in the budget?" Or whatever. Or, "Can you find out if there's any of these classes coming up?" If we're out and about somewhere, I will say, "Yep, absolutely. Can you shoot me an email?" Because then when I sit down to go through all of my tasks in my office, I can check them off and I won't forget. Or if that's not an option, I put it in my phone as a calendar reminder. As soon as something happens, I put it as a calendar reminder for the next, like if something I can't work on till the next day, I put it in the next day, like 9 a.m., email back such and such about this, or find out about this, or take care of this. And so it's always in my calendar, and it's basically my to-do list, but it's in a calendar format so that it alerts me, it reminds me, and that keeps me on task, and it keeps me able to be reliable. So that was just way a sidebar for you.
I mean, that was a great sidebar. I was kind of going to go down that road, and you talk about the yes, yes, yes people.
Yeah.
There's. I don't think that is being reliable and dependable. When you see the people that say yes to everything, whether they complete it or not, right? I don't think that is what reliability and dependability look like in terms of leadership, because and I think that potentially could be uncovering a deeper, issue and things like that. Because if we're just blindly saying yes, or we think that we say yes more, and let's face it, like that, saying yes more can get you the promotion in the corporate world and all these other things. But it's always that give and take. If we give everything, it goes back to the things we talk about in values. What do we value more? Family, professional life, like where does all that stack up? And like Kerry was saying, dependability, reliability is also knowing when to say no as well. And I think that's so true. And it's such a hard concept when we use these terms, reliability, dependability, and we're telling you don't say yes to everything, right? Because there is not an ounce of me that believes that yes, yes, yes are those things. And a lot of times you can see that, and like you said, the people who say yes and don't complete it, like what's that internal strife look like? It makes so much sense because through our careers, I'm sure we have seen both sides, the people that say yes and do a good job and complete tasks, but at what cost, right? They might look strong professionally, but what's going on in their personal life? So yeah, they might be dependable, reliable, from what we see in some surface level actions, but deep down, what's really going on and what's that personal life like? Like, if you have a great professional life and a horrible personal life, like, I'm sorry, like it needs to be balanced. And then if you're that yes person and then you're not completing things, like you look at that and you're like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, the perception and these things start to brew over a course of career, and you get stuck with this identity that isn't you got yourself into for whatever reason. So it goes back to values, what we value the most, and then we're making our decisions based on that, and hopefully sharing those with the younger people coming in and building the next generation, et cetera, and really diving into what these terms mean. And then having that balance so we understand we can be reliable in these situations. We can be dependable in these situations, but not in everything. Like we can't carry it all, and that's where I think effective leadership really is strong when we look at these words, is understanding that we can't do it all. So we set up our teams, we set up people for where they can be reliable, where I cannot be, where they can be dependable, where I cannot be, and having the humility to understand that, hey, we can't do everything. But it is just so interesting to me. And, we talked about in the past actions versus words. And, when we look at reliability and dependability, this is where you really see it. The people that say things and then their actions are not meeting their words, and that is not being reliable or dependable. And over the course of a career, what we want to work towards is those matching. And to do that is a lot of work. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. But when our actions meet our words, we could become a predictable leader. And a predictable leader becomes a reliable leader and a trusted leader. And that's like the whole how all these terms and values just kind of circumvent each other. And they all need a little bit of attention to really become that effective leader in the end. So, yeah, it's always about, when we look at these words and we have these conversations, it's not just that first thought that comes into your mind on what you think reliability is. It's always peeling that onion back so many more layers and just diving deep into this stuff because that's where the real growth is going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Authentic leaders are dependable because if you are saying you are going to do something and you're doing it, you're being genuine and you're being authentic. But if you're saying you're going to do something or you're saying you're going to be somewhere and you're not, that's not authentic. That's not being genuine. So I'm a very firm believer that authentic people are dependable people and dependable people are authentic people because you're saying what you're saying, you're doing what you're saying you're going to do. So and I think that's so important. And and I also think it also goes back to you have to know you have to really know what you are capable of to be reliable. Because if you're yes, 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 yesing, and you've got a ton of stuff on your plate, like where do you draw the line at what you can and cannot accomplish? Now maybe you can say yes, 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 because you don't have a whole lot of stuff on your plate and you're like looking for stuff and jumping into all these things. But I think 99% of the time that's not the case. So you really have to understand yourself and know how long it takes you to get certain things done, what you are good at and what you're not great at. So like some stuff that I know I'm not great at, I know it is going to take me a really long time. So I have to be really honest if I have to take on something that involves a spreadsheet or a budget or data, like my brain doesn't operate. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was going to snore.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the boring
Yeah.
stuff.
So that takes me a lot longer. And so and that stuff, that I have to take care of in my wheelhouse, I have to purposely allow myself more time than I think I need because I'm going to get into it and I'm going to act like the Grinch for 30 minutes before I start and go, hate, 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 because I hate spreadsheets and I hate budgets. And then I will work on it and then I have to take a break to let my brain defrost and like it just takes me so much longer, but that's something I have to be very, very cognizant of, especially during budget time if I'm asked to take on other stuff. And I also have to be very aware of what else is on my plate and how it affects projects and assignments and big stuff like that. Because I know in my world as a training chief, for the calendar year, I know pretty much when most of my programs that I'm responsible for start and stop. And I know about how long most of those take me. But that took a long time to build that out, and so I operated in chaos for a few years in my position because especially well, and I've been back and forth to different positions, but it took me a long time to figure out that stuff that's predictable, I need to know very concretely when it takes place, how long it takes me, and get some processes in place that help kind of manage that stuff so that if I'm going to take on more stuff or create new programs or new anything, I have to fit it in with those things that already exist. So in whatever industry you're in, you need to have systems and processes in place that A, help you manage some of that stuff and B, that make things predictable for you. So then like, okay, I know in January, it's hard for me to take on new stuff because we've got several programs that kick back off. I know in September it's hard. And it's just one of those things I can kind of picture it out in my head. And I know when I can say yes or no to new things. And I also know when I could say yes, but it's going to take me a little longer because I also have this, and this is the time commitment for these things. So being very organized will help you a ton with being dependable, not just with answering little small things that you're supposed to take care of for people that are, and I'll digress a little bit. The little things that you take care of for people without people having to remind you are big deals. They are to me anyways. They're big deals because then you become someone people trust. People trust that you're gonna follow through, and they're like, "Hey," and then you become it might backfire on you because then you become the go-to person. They're like, "Well, we know Kyle will take care of it because he always follows through. Every time we ask him, 'Hey, for help on this,' or every time we ask him to look into something, he comes right back to us, or he comes back and says, 'Hey, like, I can't figure it out, but I'm still looking,' or you become the go-to person for people. You become so trusted, so just be careful of that too. But it's a good thing. That is a good thing. But yeah, put put stuff in place for if you're not a person that uses a calendar on your phone, you gotta do it. Some or even if you need to be old school, carry around like a pocket calendar, but like or use your notes app with reminders in it. Like I use my notes app for all kinds of stuff and I can share my notes app like with my husband and like if there's stuff he needs to be in the loop about, but just being very organized, it just makes you so less stressed, and then you can know if you need to say yes or say no, or if you need to say not yet.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I look at what you were just talking about is that reliability is leadership in the mundane, the follow-ups and the things of that nature. A lot of times when we get this idea of leadership, we just think these crazy, rash, major decisions and big speeches and all this other stuff. But it's like you were saying, Kerry, it's in the follow-ups, right? It's in the consistency, the phone calls that are returned, the promises that are kept, and it's in it looks reliability is essentially almost that leadership practice in the ordinary day after day. And it's just showing up consistently so people understand what they have. And over time, the goal is if you want to shift a culture, just do it through your actions. And over time, your reliability can essentially become a cultural standard, not just a personal trait for yourself. And I think there's so much when we look at changing cultures or shifting cultures in our own actions is how you're going to do it. We can go around and parade with slogans and sayings and, we got to do this, we got to do that. But, the actions of, it starts with the actions of one and then how inspired the people around you become. And then one turns to two and et cetera, et cetera. And, unfortunately for some cultures you get into and you can implement all this stuff and the things we speak about and you'll never see the cultural shift. But, 10 years after you leave an organization, it might get to that cultural shift and it all started because of you. So you never know when you're planting a seed. There's my little sidebar, So it's just crazy because we could look at reliability as leadership in the mundane and the day-to-day and the ordinary. But I think, especially in our worlds and the people that work in more the high stress environments or critical decision making, reliability also creates a sense of stability in chaos, especially in our leaders, right? If we have incident commanders out there that we know and that we trust and, we've worked under before that have this calm about them, the crazier the incident, the calmer they become, you're like, this is awesome, right? Because, in those types of scenarios, that is very contagious, and when you have that understanding of who is in charge on those scenes and you understand how they operate, like it can create a huge sense of stability. It could give you confidence in your role because there's trust that goes both ways. I mean, the dividends that pays in incidents and high stress situations, not just, emergency response, but other high stress type incidents, emergency management field, disaster recoveries type scenarios, things of that nature. When we look at all those and we have an understanding of how our leaders operate and we can depend on them to function in that role and we can already anticipate how it's going to go from their vantage point and understand what they're going to want from us, it just provides a response that is so much more efficient and gets to the end goal much quicker. So this term reliability, it just pays dividends in so many areas of leadership, from the chaotic areas to the mundane areas. It is just so beneficial. And as we sit here and talk about this, it's not something that if you listen to us tomorrow, you're going to wake up and going to be like, I'm going to be reliable today. No, it is over time and learning your values and learning how to have your words match your actions and be consistent on a daily basis. And when you have a bad day, how are you being consistent through that, or having a great day, how are you being, is where we're kind of staying level throughout the course of our profession or our groups that we're a part of. And I think this is a lot of work. And I think, for especially younger people coming in, when we look at reliability in the mundane, like this is where you can start. Build your consistency on a day to day, return the phone calls, follow up with people, just keep it very simple, very human, very simple, and just start there, and then over a course of a career in 5 years, 10 years, you're just going to be able to build this and build a consistency, build the trust. And then, you'll have that stability in chaos. People are going to listen to you. They're going to know what they get. And like the work that you put in now is going to pay off in a few years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. And I had a whole other point, and then I just listened to you, and it left my brain because your stuff was so good. Yeah, I totally forgot what I was going to say on that point. But I will say too that for me, something I've learned. Oh, I remember now. You were talking about chaos and the dependable people in chaos, and I'll say not just chaos, but high stakes projects.
Yeah.
Projects or work that you're doing that has very high stakes, especially if you have to work in a team and other people have different components of it. This is where I get really stressed out because if I know someone in the team is not necessarily super dependable or super reliable, the part that I'm working on, I'm stressed about because I'm like, are they doing what and I know like that's some control issues on my part. I recognize that. But like if historically someone on my team is not super reliable and part of their project in our, you know, thing that we're working on, I get nervous, like, and I want to check in with them and check in with them. Don't be that person on the team that someone else has to, like, especially someone that's of equal rank has to come in and like manage you. Like, don't be that person because it's stressful for everyone. And like, I want the final product to be successful and not a failure, especially if it's something very high stakes that you can't afford to screw up. Like, I don't need to be worrying about someone else making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like, you need to step up and make sure that you're carrying your weight if it's a group effort. And so that's my little soapbox about that. But the other thing I was going to say is I learned, and I think the fire chief is probably who taught me this, is like we had, all the battalion chiefs, a lot of the captains, everybody's kind of working on a thing. Everybody has something that in their mind is the most important thing that needs to be done in our organization, like right now. And so we're all running in our specific direction, which is actually in probably 10 or 15 different directions. And when you're independently all doing that, it's little pebbles in the pond. You're making little pebbles in the pond because it's so hard to get it all accomplished because we're all trying to independently be very reliable in our thing. But a big stone, if you can compile those efforts and you can focus some of that energy, like, okay, for this year, the priorities are boom, boom, and boom. And some sidebar priorities are boom and boom. Then you don't have 20 things. You can really focus your efforts in getting those 3 things done. And then they're knocked out done. They're awesome. They've had 100%, effort thrown at them. And it's a it makes a bigger ripple. It's a bigger difference than 100, everybody working on their own little thing and these little ripples in the pond. So if you're in an organization where you aren't organized in that manner, I highly encourage you to try to figure that out. And what we did was, and originally I thought it was pretty cheesy, but our boss did Venn diagrams. And so a big circle in the middle, and then we were all little bubbles off of it. And off of our little bubble, we each had to put 3 things for that year that we needed to work on. And one of them needed to overlap with 2 other people. So, like for me, when the year we started doing it, I'm trying to think, we wanted to create an acting captain program and we needed to look at revamp or revisit We do a work performance evaluation, which is basically an annual physical agility test for all the firefighters in our department. And we wanted to kind of investigate, is it still doing what we wanted it to be doing? Was there something else better? And what did we need to do with that? Well, that overlaps training and health and safety. So I needed to overlap that with the health and safety chief. And so it really helped us dial in what projects we could work on together and really make a difference. And it helped focus us and our efforts that Kerry wasn't working on 20 things in the training division and getting none of them done. Instead, Kerry needed to be very focused and work on these 3 things for this year, get them done, knocked out, and move on to the next thing. And I loved it. It kept me very organized. And he would come, our boss would come and check in, and I had mine printed out and like stuck up in my office. And I would check off stuff as I worked through it. And he'd be like, "How's it going?" And he would help us kind of stay on task. But that's a good way to kind of help you get started.
Yeah, I like how individual reliability, dependability can pay dividends as far as a team, right? And as long as it's approached correctly, like you're saying, small pebbles, but then once things come together and efficiencies are put into place, how then organizationally you become reliable. And like in our worlds, right, our industry should be extremely reliable, right? So, that's just good how our individual approaches pays, on an organizational level as well.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, to kind of wrap this up, but sometimes I think about when I'm at home, like, is there anybody that I'm letting down, or is there anybody that I've told I would take care of something and I'm not? And just to make sure, like, in my mind, and like I said, I have to write stuff down all the time. And if you're not writing stuff down, it's not happening. Like for me, anyways. Like I know super dependable people that are dependable in a way, like if you need them, they're going to show up, like they're going to drop everything, but they're not dependable necessarily like on a day-to-day basis for stuff, right? So I think there probably is some differentiation there, but like for our listeners, is there somebody out there that you've told you would do something and you're not doing it? Like what can you do to make it right? Like what's one thing you could do right now to make that right? Like just start there and I think this is not glamorous, but man, this is legacy stuff. This is stuff when I think back to the people in my life, leaders, great coworkers, great people, like, in the community, awesome people in my family, like, they were the dependable people. Those people were dependable in my life, and it's a lasting impact.
Yeah, I would have to. That's yeah.
Mic drop or leave it there.
Yeah, that's a mic drop moment. You got me thinking a lot, right? I think that's the whole thing with leadership is to constantly self-reflect and where have you made the mistakes, how to improve on that, and then see, looking at the people around you and the people you remember and the people that have had a lasting impact on you, and what is one of those things, and you look at dependability as one of those things, and it's so true.
Yeah, and sometimes it requires sacrifice.
Yeah.
It really does, like and I think about the people I admire, and how I admire their dependability, and it's usually that, they're the people that will drop anything to come help you, and I think it's admirable, not to the detriment of your family, obviously. Like, if it's, a huge detriment to your family that you're dropping everything to go help everybody do all the things, like, that's the line you have to draw.
Right.
But, like, the really dependable people, they understand that line and how to draw that line, but they're showing up when you need them. All right. This was great. Thanks for letting me I just really wanted to talk about that today.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, listeners, thanks again, and hit us up on social media with ideas if you want us to brainstorm something or talk through something. If you've got ideas, please shoot them to us. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we love your feedback. So, take care. Stay warm.
You've been listening to the HC Leadership Podcast. Leadership isn't rank or title, it's how you show up. So go look in the mirror. Are you leading with purpose today? Keep reflecting, keep leading. Until next time.